as last year's unless they cut it, which we never know they could do too.
So Debbie, could you explain how the weed mills work? The 1.6 allocated by MCA and the 5 voted mills?
Well, there's a statute, I don't have these numbers memorized, that guarantees weed can mill 1.6 mills to cover their expenses. And years ago, they deemed that that wasn't enough money to control our noxious weeds. So the weed department went out for 5 mills. And it was approved by the voters, so they are guaranteed 6.6 mills to use to fight weeds. And so far, I think it's worked out pretty good. They supplement it with a lot of grants through the weed grant account and cooperative agreements with like BLM and homeowners. Montana Railing, I think, helps with some, I'm not positive. Forest Service to help spray some of those noxious weeds on properties that affect the forest and affect the local areas. And so they're guaranteed that money, and so basically they stay with that and guarantee that to run their department. And that's to fund their equipment, and if they don't need to spend all that, then they do have a CIP that they roll it into. So if they need equipment, new spray equipment. So prior weed people wanted to try to build a building to store their equipment and chemicals in. So that's what those are for, and that's what that does. And they're doing pretty good. There's a couple of amendments I have to give them spending authority. Mary, when she got here, wasn't sure.
They are doing good.
So Jessica's help are doing good. Predatory animal and predatory sheep are just their fees, assessments, based on landowners and how many cattle they have. They get a certain price per head, and then we get that money and then send it into the Predator Control Association for helping fight the wolves and the coyotes and all the take out the cattle and the sheep.
Are we just a pass-through on that?
More or less, yeah. Yeah. We get an invoice from them when they do the half, and if we've gotten the money in, we pay it. If we don't, we send them what we have. Learn the hard way when you don't give them more than what's cash available. Even though they want it, they don't get it. And most of the time they're pretty good at, okay. Last couple of years we've questioned, especially the sheep, because it seems like they budget way more for sheep than, or we have way more for sheep than they get, which send us a bill for. I don't know if they miscount or if they lose them, or it just seems off. And then they usually send you guys a letter, you sign the MOU, saying, okay, we agree, and then when they want their money, they basically send us a bill for the same, for half a year, and then we do a claim and send it off.
Hey, one thing with weed, did you notice the personnel costs? We've double-checked that one comp too. 500 over budget. Again, not an alarming, but since you're checking, looks like that's probably.
That's a Mary thing.
And fair looks good, based on fair being in the next fiscal year.
Yeah, and that's one like I referenced. They've spent 61% of their wages. Some of that, is because Lisa and Jessica, it's all hot and heavy until the end of the season, and it backs off. I did remind Jessica that she needs to watch Lisa's hours, because she's still going to need some time for her at the end of the fiscal year as fair starts to wind up. And that she didn't want to go over budget. So I wasn't watching, thank you. And here's another one that I need to talk with Jessica on. They have 2 different funds. She's got operating supplies and then their grants and donations, or excuse me, the awards and indemnities. And before Jessica took over, they had these 2 different ones, and Michelle Christensen would come in and she would get cash, $5,000 cash, take from each of these and spend that money on all the stuff to get the fair going, rather than a bunch of little checks, she would get cash, get receipts. What she didn't spend, she would bring back in. Jessica charged everything to operating supplies and didn't spend anything to the awards and indemnities for ribbons and prizes. And so I'm not sure if she understands how that works because there's nothing unspent. So that's why the one looks over and nothing in the other one. So I gotta talk with her. She didn't
She's
spend.
3,000 over, but she's not pulling anything out of the awards and then she's balanced.
So she's still balanced, it just, with how she's spending it, and this might be how she does it, so we might need to separate that out.
Sure.
So that's something I gotta talk with her next time I see her. Pick her brain. I know they were working on more sponsorships to help increase for the spending and operating stuff for the fair. And I think this is kind of one of their first years, so I think she had other things on her mind. And try to keep it simple. But I gotta talk to her on that one.
Okay.
Their budget itself is okay.
Yeah.
It's just some of those individual line items. And airport, for the most part, looks pretty good. Now that they got, I think, most of the runway done. We don't usually see much unless it's for fuel, which is their Object 230 for repair and maintenance supplies.
And we have the lowest fuel here. Well, you know this, Darrell, right?
I do, and I talked to Mike about that, and he's pretty clever. He knows that this time of year, fuel prices are low, and that's why the guys just get
Mhm.
load.
And I think we just had a bill for that.
Yeah,
Yep.
and we're seeing that, so.
And then that's why they do the fly-in, is trying to attract a bunch of people to come in the summer and buy it when it, get fuel when it's more expensive at the pump. Yeah. Yep.
Pretty good.
It's a hoot.
So district court, we infused some Hilt for the jury services. Those were all reimbursed by the state, correct me if I'm wrong. But what Val wanted was, instead of always running in the negative waiting for that reimbursement, she wanted a upfront supply so that she would go down to zero and then when we get the reimbursement, she'd be up again to the positive. And then what we also did last year, she has 2.5 employees. And so what we did is we gave her half a mil. She runs on entitlement share, not mills. Everything is reimbursed except for employee cost and operations. So I guess there's not much left. Jury fees is all that's reimbursed.
Jury fees really.
So the operations of district court, state district court, much like the other issues we've been having, is on the county. And so we gave a half a mil to try and increase her overall money so that she could have the 2.5 people. And right now it looks pretty good. The goal last year was to move her to 1 mil. So if we have an extra mil this year, that's one place that we should try and look at it going.
And then we added that involuntary psych evals line item for her to pull it out of her budget. So it wasn't the account 410328, psychiatric examinations, because she had some of those involuntary commitments.
Right.
So that it doesn't skew her budget, because I think isn't there something that comes in on some of those?
Yeah, she had said last year, and I don't remember the numbers exactly, but she said, we've gone years without any, and all of a sudden we had several. It trashed out the budget. So we put actually extra money in there and divided out the budget so that when that happens, we can track it better and it doesn't affect her overall.
And gave her a new fund, so it doesn't skew her working fund and the mills that we give, so it keeps it separate too. Otherwise it hurts her.
But she looks pretty good.
But she's doing good so far.
Yeah.
Knock on wood.
So the comprehensive insurance, we pay that from PILT. And if we were to get PILT, we would have to find that in all the different departments. I would think a percentage. But that would be tough.
That one would be a
But
hard
we
one.
could do it.
Yeah, we could do it.
But everybody would be hurting.
And it's coming up for renewal. because June's already meeting with you guys, or has met with you guys to start working on this next year. Hopefully we went down for accidents. And mosquito was another one of those that gets its own mills and mill values to fund its budget.
The whole thing is voted, like the 5 mills for weed. So that can only be used for mosquitoes.
So are all of our public, or all of our division under public works is our workman's comp?
Yeah,
Line on every one of those?
Yeah.
Oh, good eye.
They're all 300%.
yeah. We noticed that looking at this yesterday. We got late before we could figure out what's going on. I have a feeling that there was a input error when I was doing the budget and uploaded. And there should be like, instead of $73, it should be $730
Oh,
type of thing, is what I'm thinking.
But easily fixed,
It's
probably
easily
once you
fixed.
figure out what the error is.
It just, I would have to do a journal or a budget amendment due to operator error, clerical error. That system sometimes I've noticed doesn't like to take the decimal, and I don't always catch it. And I think that's one of those cases. And so they did spend a lot more on mosquito last year, larviciding, so we didn't have enough budgeted for that one. But the rest of the budget absorbed it, so they're still good at 41%. I mean, they have some reserves built up because there hasn't been much of it. There's kind of a buildup. So if they wanted to get real hot and heavy with larviciding and different things this year, they could get really aggressive because they've got quite a bit of cash.
And we would like to address,
To do more of that, to kill them critters.
right, early.
Yes.
So Parks and Rec, should that be under planning? Since it's planning money that finances it, the payment to lieu of land?
No. It's like when she worked for the community development and the ball field lights and donation. That's part of, it was part of recreation. Silos is recreation. So that's why this is, there's a separate fund.
Should this one
So
be a
it's not part
separate
of her
fund?
planning. So yeah, it should
Or
be.
under community well, community development is planning,
Mhm.
so it shouldn't be there.
No, that should be separate because it's donations that are funding that. And that could skew the planning budget with, like, outside of her normal work.
Is it appropriate to keep it in general fund versus its own?
It's its own account, it's fund, 2210 fund, in its own account.
Oh, okay,
So it's
Sorry.
not in the general fund. so
you're right,
okay.
we're out of the general fund, we have been for a while, okay.
Is that account that has the 69,000 from subdivisions?
I believe so. Yes. And there was just another 20,000 between the Broadwater Trust Board and JSJ, Gateway,
Sure.
Sharon, so to help, and that was specific, restricted for the silos.
Where's that at? What line?
We're looking at Fund 2210. And this doesn't show, this shows an expenditure.
Parks and Rec,
Parks
it's
and
at the
Rec.
bottom of,
But where did you just find this?
The revenue, I pulled a separate report,
Oh, on the-
and I don't, that's revenue, it should show in there as a revenue received.
Okay. Contributions and donations.
Yeah.
it's showing 20?
20,000.
Yep. That doesn't give the cash, because there's already 50, 60,000 cash sitting in there from over the years of,
Okay.
and it's just added to it, so there's a bigger chunk to do stuff for the silos. And I'll get an updated cash report sent to you to go with this. Think about that.
Okay.
Yeah, those are just two. So like when I go to a budget amendment, I have to show revenue receiving authority for that because we've gotten revenue that we didn't expect to get this year when we did the original budget. And then they spent some, I'm not sure what they spent it on, professional services, so maybe a surveyor or somebody coming in. So they spent 4,000 out of it for something.
Planning looks pretty solid. Planning is mostly a self-supporting budget. We do give a $500,000 for the community development. And she asked to change her name from planning department to community development a couple of years ago because she does so much more than just planning. She does addressing, GIS. But in 2013, when Nancy Everson was here, she said, watch your planning. We're starting to not bring in the revenue, yet you still have obligations for that department. So you can't close it down. You're gonna have to find some means of funding it. So we took a little bit from PILT this year, about 19,000. And that was from a fund that specifically was derived from economic development. That's those tournaments we talked about. Planning doesn't have any mills. But ironically, they do give money, a percentage of the planning revenue to the general fund rather than putting it back in planning. So it's kind of a convoluted triangle we may want to address this year.
And since she has 3 different components, her wages are based on a percentage of the time she spends on each of those. So she's got 3 different account lines to signify how much time she spends on those. So it charges all 3 accounts in planning versus just one. So that there's a differentiation because of what she does do. There's so much overlap. Library, which was before planning, they get part of the floating mills to help operate. And then depending on what they need, sometimes commissions give them a little from PILT. And they work hard at trying to keep their expenditures down too. Until the 50%, they've gotten the first half of their taxes, and so now it's just a matter of the taxes that come in May and sending them their other half. What they said they need to cover their budget for the county portion of services they provide.
Contracted services and all that.
What was the breakout on all that? Staff,
What it is a partnership with the school, so we get a detailed budget from the school. It's not in our budget sheets, but it's in theirs. So it's a county community library, so we each pay about 50%. And when we do the budget, we actually have that, I can show it to you in my budget book. But our contracted services are just to pay our half, and then they plug it into their full budget.
different. And then our senior citizen meals and transportation, we also designate some of our floating meals to them.
And that's actually a match for a federal grant, so those funds, or those 2 departments are totally, senior citizen travel is actually Meals on Wheels. And then the meals is the the dinner club. And this is actually our match for the federal
And for
money
RMDC
to pay for the whole thing.
RMDC sends us a bill because they're the ones that sponsor this and do the grant work. So that's what the contracted services line there is for. And so they've gotten about roughly half of this year's. We could only send them what we had with November taxes. Hopefully we'll get the rest. I'm trying to think, like 2.75 meals or something like that for the meals to cover the expense for our portion. And we also share some floating meals, like 3 something to extension.
That's looking really good.
And she's looking good. She's actually even just a little bit below 58%. That has to do with just between when Tammy left and hiring Katria, I think. So they're actually doing pretty good at 49%. And for the most part, public safety is doing good. Control and dispatch is a little over, but that's part of that overtime. Trying to keep staffed. But for public safety itself, they're at 53% overall.
That's really good.
So they're doing really, really good. Kudos, Brendan.
Mm.
Got a text message on the meeting about the AG, so I was wondering.
We're
I was responding to that.
We're a public safety budget. And I said, they're at 53%, so they're doing really good. And kudos.
Yeah, we've been working pretty hard
No.
to get that down.
You know, doing really good. So, it's better than some of the rest of us that are at 58%, so that's good.
Yeah.
So, they're doing good. Just a few little line items here and there we need to get some spending authority to, but that's a simple fix until the end of the year comes and we see how things are really gonna play out. And hopefully, it will continue the way it's been going, because they're doing really good.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Yeah.
Juvenile transport, that's what we pay to Great Falls to house our juvenile there, 300 and some per day. Are they still there? Do you know?
Well, no, we had one that, I think he ended up going to Idaho. Problem is, there's some new things coming up, and I think he may be coming back. And I think we were paying up to, there was one bill that Tammy paid that was like $7,000. That was like the second one of that. 'Cause we had to go to Missouri to pick up this juvenile and bring him back here.
This is,
That's, one, so.
and this is like the second time since I've been here that I've really seen something like this for them.
Oh, it
He's
has
the
been years
highest.
since we've had any, yeah,
Mhm.
it still stays on many levels.
Yeah, I think juvenile probation courts are really trying to do everything they can before they have to put somebody in there, This young man is unfortunate, he cannot be out, so. But, hopefully, we'll see if he comes back to work, for Idaho.
So that one we might as well just leave to the end of the year,
Right, but be aware,
but beware,
we did put a little bit in there at the beginning of the year, was it 4,000? So it should have some original appropriation, right?
Well, I think we left it blank until we knew if we were gonna have anything.
Oh, okay.
We might have put, some cash and revenue. I don't remember. That was one of the ones we set aside, I think. Yeah, we set aside 6,000
Okay.
to put into that as far as revenue from Pell to help offset. So we did that done, and so then the cash.
What is the expenditures, what has been spent in that account so far?
19,740.
Actually, we spent down what cash we had, and we're in the hole, $3,887 negative cash. So we spent what we had.
That's
And then some.
not as bad as this looks,
No,
so that's good to know.
because we had to pay the bills,
Right,
but we had enough in there to cover it, now we're just,
okay. It's not good, but it's not as bad as 19,000.
yeah. That one's scary. And then, economic development is the BCDC and the MBAC dues that we give to them. I don't think that who's not here.
I'm gonna ask Ernie
That might
Forey.
be Ernie's portion that we haven't sent to him yet, because I think we did the MBAC,
Yeah,
and I think we did the BCDC.
right, I'm still waiting. I am gonna ask Ernie Forey and the rest of BCDC and MBAC to come to a meeting for Economic Development Day. What do they do for us? What do they do for the citizens? How do they save us money? How do they help us move forward in a way that's positive? So that'll be coming. And then, we can address BCDC at that time, hopefully.
The museum is another one we get some more floating meals to. And she's done pretty good. She works 31 hours a period, basically. Not 12 until she turned in sick or vacation time, but I think if she's not there, doesn't have to work. So they're looking pretty good. Group health, these two are tricky every year, group health and permissive, because I have to switch from the two accounts. And so right now it's showing that the group health is over, even though we're technically not in the cash. If I don't get those changed, excuse what this looks like, but by the end of the year it balances out. That's where having two accounts to watch for is not, I wish we didn't have to do it this way, but they're two separate mills.
Yeah, would you explain the difference between,
The health insurance is part of our regular floating mills. Permissive is a special levy milled based on the countywide valuations, and it starts way back in 2006 with a formula that they started working on and ended in 13, 14, to come up with an average of what you could bill in addition to your regular insurance under the permissive medical, because health insurance is so expensive. And it's usually based off the number of employees you have and the value of your meals. It's a separate meal that you can charge above and beyond to cover your health insurance. Make sure your needs are met. And that's what helps the commissioners pay for our health insurance and keeps the employee premiums down. I learned a little trick with the audit. If you have too many employees, you don't get, your mills are less. If you list too many employees versus fewer employees, you get more. So like when we were trying to budget and anticipating having a higher mid-year and added that number, it hurt us.
okay,
We don't get as much because it changes the number of mills you can mill.
okay, so now you know it for this year. Good, all right.
Something,
Thinking.
and that was kind of, and I, that was a recommendation that came from, you can adjust your numbers from previous individual auditing us, but I'm not sure if it was expressed clearly and misunderstood. But Kim, I love her.
Good,
We're on the same page, so much better, and that's kind of when it went poof, light bulb came on.
good,
So that'll be another change this year.
all right. Well, that makes me feel good.
And then search and recovery gets some floating mills. And thankfully, they haven't had too much searches, so they're doing really good on their budget. They're only at 23%. They're looking good. And then the Boris litigation account. Definitely, I gotta have an amendment because we made the approval to transfer from PILT versus general fund after the budget was settled. And it doesn't have the donation from Granite County in here. But that's something I need to talk with Corey, if he's gonna spend it all or how, what. I gotta get some verification on that one before I plug in numbers. If
Oh,
he wants to-
those would still go in.
I think it'll still go
regardless,
in.
Right?
Right, and it, probably professional services. And then he did get to the last little bit of his wages refund, $900 that I've got to transfer from his and put into here that he wanted.
The $900.
Like $930 overpayment for the military, where he went over the allotted 120 hours. And this is just for fiscal year 18?
2018. And 17, 16, and 15 are pending.
He did good on 18, so it's just 15 and 16 that are pending. 17, sorry.
So it is those three.
Yeah, it was 17 is the one that we started with, and 15 and 16. And he didn't go over on 18 because he retired from the military before he reached that 120. Or, I guess retired, I don't know. I think we were told. So we didn't have to worry about over those hours anymore. Employee safety, we really haven't spent much out of it, because we really haven't had a employee safety committee meeting in a while. Brian was kind of supposed to be doing it, but when he left, we kind of haven't had any.
Mike is gonna take that on, at Mary's request, but he, wasn't able to go to the Safety Fest training, last fall, so he's gonna go in March. So he wanted to get that under his belt before taking up a training position or a supervisory position on that. And what funds that account is the money we save in our insurance from having a safety culture.
The Mako Work Comp gives a discount for all the educational meetings, trainings the county has, because the more we're educated, the safer we are, the better it is on our premiums and payouts for accidents and injuries. So we put it in there to fund it. Pay some of those costs. It was originally set aside for salary and wages, but Brian never charged it for the time to coordinate the meeting and set them up. So that might be something else. I don't know what that will happen, but that's what that's for. I've set up that way. And records preservation is Doug's. That pays for all the plats, copies, the equipment that they have to maintain, all those records and copies that Anthony stuff does. That's what that funds. Is that one. So far they're doing pretty good because they haven't had a lot of equipment and things they had to replace this year for supplies, so they're doing pretty good. Silos is a rural improvement district out for the road out there. I don't see too much activity on it. Depends. Alcohol rehab. That's another one. Can't remember.
Is this for employees?
No, this is Southwestern Chemical Dependency.
So they come here, the state sends us the money, and then we pay them to come here and do AA, Al-Anon, those kinds of services for folks.
They send us a bill saying this is what this quarter's, or this year's money, and she's pretty good at sending that.
But
So we can pay it.
It always is just what we have, so we don't get overcharged, and we don't make anything on it, so we're just a pass-through, more or less.
And the DUI prevention, which is kind of a pass-through there, kind of. Tracy Kiesel and the Sheriff's Office and the Highway Patrol meet, and they sponsor the Super Bowl party for things. And in the past, it just kind of depends. I think most of that they get money was grant money or what is?
No, it's not for, reinstatement fees for driver's license.
That's what funds that, so they're pretty good at trying to stay in there. And then the gas appropriation tax is the road miles that goes to Marion. I did some journals yesterday, or the day before. Because it's, typically they get 60,000 a year, and she hadn't charged any of the fuel and things, so that's one of those ones we were talking about earlier, to get with Mary and show her. She could do this and it'll save on her road budget,
Nice.
because it's, I mean, it's based on road tax, that's what it's for. So we did, the repairs to the graders, in the roads, and the fuel for all their vehicles, can charge to that. There was one for the fabric that they use on Toston Dam that could be used under the road tax, because it's part of the roadway repairs. Raw materials would be your asphalt or gravel, if you needed some of that. So that's typically in the history, that's what's been charged to there. And then junk vehicle, we're still working on that. Like to help Mary organize some things. Michelle still is doing the administrative part of it until they decide how all they're gonna work this.
Yeah, they're working on that though, with
Yeah.
their plans.
Yeah.
that we should get that off the ground this year, hopefully soon.
So that'll change, and anything, they've changed it to where again this year, if you don't spend it, you get to put it in a CIP. And then that's where you can buy some of the equipment for the hook and to pull things up, like if you wanted to use one of the existing canister trucks to put it up on a trailer bed, a junk vehicle. Different ways, especially if it doesn't have the tires. We looked into that. So they're working on that.
How does that work with other departments? Do they have the ability to do that? If they have savings, they can put in their CIP?
Some departments, the general fund is a little harder, but the others, they do, if they have extra, or they're over between their reserves and their expenditures over the 33%, they've been tucking that away to save it, so it's not a use it or lose it concept. So that's been started, and that's when we get in here, you'll see a lot of departments that spent some out of that. But that's what they do it for, ones that can do. General fund is the only one that's really hard.
We used to be able to do a general fund and have the 33% reserves, but as it's a family, you know, with 13 or so departments, when one falls on hard times, the other ones help out that one. Someday we'll get it back to 33%, and then we'll be able to do the CIPs by department again, but until that time, it's not gonna happen again, because the family is one.
And then the weed grant, it's slowly coming back to life. That's why there's expenditures, just don't have that, because when Mary started, she didn't have a clue. Now that Jessica's here, they're getting going on it some more. She sends me emails every once in a while, what's this account, which one is this? And I got a folder from the previous weed coordinator, where we've got things set up so I can help them. 911 is exactly what it says. Sheriff has control over that, and it's to help with equipment and supplies and any training that they might need to go to offset that from fees that are collected. And we call our phones. Land use planning, that one is another one I haven't seen before. I'm not quite sure if it's new, what's in it. There's nothing budgeted in it.
Mentioned that we should be looking at a land use object code for some of our planning services. We did it for the first time last year, and I'm wondering if that isn't it.
It's just that one item as a salary, which is why I think 2860 is wrong.
Okay, so maybe a budget amendment.
Yeah, or just a journal, because I think it's got a public health administration fund or account, that it's a typo on the fund.
Okay, it was the County Land Information Act, which is 2859. So, yeah, so
This
I'm
is
guessing
2860.
just an error.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like it should have been 2960.
Oh,
Which is
okay.
bioterrorism, is what I'm thinking.
Oh, so it's, yeah, public health, that makes sense. Okay.
Until I get details. Some of our penmanship ain't the greatest. Or our fingers don't work. And then the next one is the PILT. That's your guys's.
Did you divide out the turn lane from the bulk payment? Was that reflected separate? When we got the payment for the turn lane, the bulk payment last year?
No, I believe Doug put that in there and showed it as land repayment.
Which is fine. Can you make sure that we have a separate line item for that versus just payment of the taxes line item? You know what I mean? So, right here we have payments,
I
in
think last
40.
year's report had it in there.
Okay, so can we reinstate it so that it's like 333041 or something? So that we have them divided out and can see the difference?
Something we've learned, if there's no activity, it doesn't put them in here. So if there was no activity, that revenue account, it doesn't put them on here. Even though it's active, if I pull up the field account, it's there,
Yeah,
but
okay.
if there's nothing in it, or it's not been showing
There
any
was money
revenue.
put in it last
so
year,
it went
but
into
not
the
this
fund.
fiscal year, so that's why it's probably
Mhm.
not. Okay, all right.
So it's there, so I can pull up last year's, if you want
Okay.
to.
And then would this report show anything like,
If you had
The
spent
difference.
out of a different object, it would be on here.
okay,
Or if you had a budget, you had budgeted to spend out of another object, it should pull in here.
so we were going to pay, the 19 grand planning and the, MBAC and BCDC?
That's
out of
all as
that?
it transfers out.
Transfers out, is that this one?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
And if you
And
had
so
a
we-
detail, it would show all those,
okay, all right.
how much who went to who.
So there's no way to show it coming from, it's just gonna come from
Hilt, as a transfer out, and if we did a detail report, it would show all of that. As a query, it just summarized, so you don't have the detail of all the accounts.
both. Okay. Thanks.
So that's why these, and that's some little things we're still learning about Black Mountain.
It would help to be able to see the two quote accounts, just from my own
So I'll get you
curiosity.
detail.
Okay, or I can put my own detail. Thank you.
That's where, like, when I did the budget prep module, I had it in there. So like that report you brought down earlier, it would be in there as notes, but when I roll it into the actual module, it doesn't show that.
Okay, all
Other
right,
than detail, because then I add that in the detail when I do the actual transfers. And it shows in the journal in the actual transfer. So you see.
all right.
Yeah, when we do the summary, it doesn't. We don't get Title III money much anymore, so this is just spending what's left from carryover. And then the crime victim is Brooks Victim Witness, and it's all grant, and we're fee-based. And so far, she's doing pretty good.
Yeah, 55 is very good.
And then there was a Homeland Security for communications and radios. So it's another grant, and Mike helps everybody get grants, and this is some more radio or communication equipment. But because it came from Homeland Security, we had to put it in here. So I just, and this was after the fact, there's about these after the budget. Bioterrorism is a grant through the health clinic. And as you see, she's overspent.
Are you working with her on this one just to figure
Yeah,
out
any,
where
all
the
the health
expenses
stuff,
come?
all the health
Okay.
stuff we're gonna work on. I think she's been keeping her, trying to keep her head afloat. Now that she's got Diane hired,
Right,
she'll have a little more time to focus on this kind of stuff.
and I know she's got some revenue coming in too.
Yeah.
She can grant.
And it's just one of those things, when we did this, she just, and I don't think she realized that more of what she does should come out of the public health general fund versus her grants.
Sure.
Because the grants are so finite, what you get, you shouldn't spend more than you get, and I think there's just some.
We can work on that.
Same thing with WIC, that's gonna go away, so that's another one we're gonna have to make some adjustments to.
And because of the training issues, that one's actually
Mhm.
cost us a lot.
Well, and then to have the registered dietitian services from Missoula or somebody come in, that was an additional expense that it was eating us. MCH, there again, doing pretty good, but they're grant-based. Home health, that's Geraldine going to our shut-ins and helping them with things at home, laundry, go and get groceries. Geraldine Hamaker, our home health, she goes and sees our shut-ins at the clinic.
That's through Rocky Mountain Development Council too.
And then immunizations. That one's a little over, not too bad. It's more to do with the supplies, operating supplies. She spent a little more, I think, than she anticipated, or the cost went up, one of the two, or both. So she's not doing too bad on that one. Then the mental health, that's that LAC grant. That's the local area committee on mental health. And that one, Melinda Holmes, she's gone and got herself educated in training, so she's like a certified counselor or something. She come by and taken the test and, or been hired or something to do all that. She was just tickled.
Yeah,
She came out of the way and, because I've helped her, she wanted to share with that.
that's awesome.
So I was tickled for her. Because she's really been working hard on all that paperwork, getting it done. That was a lot. And then the Deep Creek project, we thought we were done, but there were some straggler claims, so that will just have to give a budget amendment to show spending on that. I don't know if overall where we're gonna sit on that. Long run, I think we're gonna be over, so that's something to keep in mind. The auditors are probably gonna touch on when they come. We'll have to figure out how we're gonna pay for that.
Chief, what do you explain? So I know the reason why we were talking about.
Well, from what I understood, some of the work Dean and the guys were gonna do, and then it became so complex, and he didn't have time. They hired that Battle Ridge contractor group to do some of that work, and it really chewed into the costs. So the in-kind match that we were gonna do to lessen our costs didn't go through. And so it put us over, and of course then between changing staff, the old and the new, trying to keep up on the record keeping. Amber's done pretty good, but there was stuff that Mary had to try to find when Dana left. And it's just become a,
So there's gonna be some things still in the future that.
I think it's about done. I think there's a couple things we're waiting for. I think it was on the reach, remember? Some things on the reach that was trying to settle,
Right.
I remember right. But we're still in the hole like 60,000. Because we paid for it, but didn't have the cash reimbursement to cover it, because some of the in-kind match wasn't done. And of course, when you hire a contractor, it costs more than if you do it yourself.
Dana had targeted his gravel, money to pay for that, so that's something we'll have to
But what
look through the budget
he
for.
spent it elsewhere on other roads, not realizing. Was the account that he kept giving me and that Jeremy and Sean said it was used. And when I said, was this for this? They said, no, that was something else. So it,
That's something we're gonna have to do some heavy lifting on, I think.
and now we're at the 4,000 funds, which are all our CIPs, which is all our savings. And nobody submitted budgets to spend this year out of their CIPs, but all of them on the attached pages have spent. So I have to go and look at their accounts and make sure they got money to cover what they spent when I do the budget amendment.
The general fund, just to let you know, that's Mike's essentially, and it's a building maintenance fund. So he'll use it for all county buildings that need general maintenance. We generally put about 60 grand a year into that one. We didn't put anything in this year, but he had some left over. And I think he said just the other day he's got about 19 grand still. So,
Yes, 18.
Search and rescue, they almost always have a surplus, so they're able to put money almost every year.
Is that stuff that they, run through the account, not that much, the donations account?
Correct. Yeah.
So are they over?
No, what they did is they purchased something, but see, this is where nobody in the Surgeon Recovery Road Fair, none of them said I want to spend money out of my CIP when we did the budgets. Nobody would give me anything. It was like, fine, if you're not gonna spend it, I gotta go with what I got. Well, now they turned around and, oh yeah, I want to spend it out of my CIP. So we don't have appropriations set, but they should have the cash. So it's just part of the another part of the amendment I have to do to show, to give them spending authority based on the cash they had sitting in their account. cover it. With the exception of road. And they did budget and haven't spent yet, so,
I think that was probably the Viking that they bought from Townsend Marine.
yeah, that might be.
They didn't get it donated again, and they realized how useful that is for, I mean, you just scream up a county road or a Forest Service road instead of taking a truck and having to go way slow, so I think that was a huge purchase for them to
Mhm.
make sure we just had that, so.
And there was money. Yeah, they have 22,000 sitting in there, so they have money to cover it.
Who's that?
Search and recovery.
Rescue?
Yeah, to cover their equipment.
We'll do a better job this year of trying to, look ahead and actually do maybe a little better budget for them on expenditures. Because I think in my first year doing the search and rescue one, I didn't really know.
It was everybody on the CIPs.
Oh, okay.
It's like everybody forgot they had them and were so focused on their regular budget that they
Yeah.
didn't. I don't know, it's weird. Usually there's always something in there, but this year, I was left in the dark. So I said, I can't wait, so let's do an amendment. They were doing solid waste. Involving her work comp issue.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, can I ask a quick question?
Working meetings.
I understand that, I just wanted to just ask a real quick question on part of the budget process. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. I'm sorry. I understand it's a working meeting, but I just had a real quick question, since it is part of the budget. A simple question, current balance of Phil. Because it's been mentioned several times as far as being part of the budget process.
And Debbie, when we do come up with a current balance of PIL, just a question for you, should we not be also going through and putting together all the CIPs since they're mostly funded with PIL?
Well, they're not all mostly funded, but most of them are funded or have been in the past with anything over their 33% reserves when they had them.
Most of them by number, but not most of them by amounts, the 60,000 building.
I know the
maintenance
road, I
is
know
PIL,
the maintenance one has been by pill.
Right?
I think the rest of them for the most part.
Well, airport is PIL, ambulance has been PILed. So, it's not a simple answer, is I guess what I'm getting at. So, it seems to me those should be included. We might just have to get back to Tim.
Yeah, this sheet theoretically that I give you guys is intended to give you an idea of where, if we get our pill, what you'll have at the end. It doesn't account for what we have right now.
Sure.
Because we've actually spent all this, with the exception of a couple that we had thought we would spend and haven't, with what cash we have on hand. And right now, we're kind of right at zero in the cash, because we spent what we had, and until we get that bill payment, put it back in there, we're borrowing from our overall reserves from others. That's how that works. That's why we've got to be careful with our spending, so we don't get pill or as much. We don't really have that reserves to cover our obligations.
So do we expect to, if and when we hear that we're gonna get the, how long before we actually get it? Do we hear like we're gonna get it and it's like a month later? Or
No.
we're gonna get it and we won't pay it till June?
Last year, usually, we know in September of the year before that we're going to get billed. So we essentially have 18 months notice, and then we get the payment the last day of June. So last year, we had gotten notice that, yeah, you're gonna get billed, but nobody knows how much. And then the last day of June, it came in 150,000 more. than we thought it was gonna be. So it's a crapshoot. This year, we're in February now with no notice at all. So nobody knows, so we can't spend anything more, you know, than what we have in the Pilt accounts now, at this point. If there's 1,192 counties that get Pilt, and a lot of them use Pilt to balance their budgets. So if they don't fund Pilt, something that's been going for close to 100 years, you're gonna have a number of counties screaming and yelling, and elected officials, congressional delegates, governors, state legislators, that are going to react. So if we don't get it in June, my sense is we would get it a couple months later. I don't think they can just stop it. And when you look at the overall budget, it's, you know, it's a grain of sand what they pay the counties. So, I think we'll get it, but we just don't know how much, we don't know when, and we don't know for sure. But what we could get is a letter that says, yep, you'll get billed and it's gonna be for this much, and it's gonna be in your bank account tomorrow. Yeah. How's that for a nothing answer?
Just clear.
Right?
Just as clear as the state of the union for us.
When I did the worksheet, in theory, you should have 178,000 in pills to get our pill payment.
So that covers some of our emergencies through the end of the year, but we shouldn't spend it for those.
Until you know, if we don't get it,
Right. And that 170 pays for insurance, which is 160, so, yeah.
So this is only gonna get better.
Right.
as much as possible, yep. And that's been the hard part. Tried to do that this year, that's why I do this sheet. Because when people come with their requests, you can kind of see in a snapshot what the requests and what they want. So you can kind of factor in and decide, yes, we will, or no, we won't, we can do this, but we can't do that, or we should or shouldn't this one or that one. So it's in a nutshell.
And one of the things we've done pretty faithfully through the years is use PILT for capital expenses and unforeseen expenses, not to balance the budget. Last year, we did do economic development from PILT, and we did do some of our planning budget from PILT. Other than the insurance, everything on there is capital. So I think we've done pretty good, and that's why I say if we didn't get PILT, it would be tough, but we would be okay. Other counties, their PILT is spent the day they finish the budget because it's helping pay for staff. If you lose PILT, that staff is then in jeopardy. So,
And I know previous commission boards, they used it to pay for cost of living a couple times for people. So, just depends on the board. So solid waste, as far as what they want to spend, there's okay, but they're still not getting quite the revenues that they were hoping to get. And they're still in the negative cash.
So they'll be telling me thoughts on their proposed rate increase, how fast the pay will be cut. So
For their assessment fees. Did she want to go up to 185, didn't she say? That's $60. Couple of years.
So you think you're just considering just the assessment, not the savings in our separation plus the
Because it's still,
anticipated extra revenue from non-paying and construction demolition.
because I don't have a history to go on to factor how much it's gonna be versus what we've had versus what it looked like. Because we have